Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. And I'm super excited to be joined by some of my awesome peeps over at Expresia for a really fun conversation today about what it looks like to be empowered by technology. And so, as everyone kind of comes into the room and gets situated for this conversation today, I'm really excited. So let's start with a little bit. Who am I? Who is this talking head that entered the room? I'm Tracy Borison, your friendly neighborhood authentic marketer. And I was having a fun conversation with Paula the other day about what it looks like to be empowered by technology. And in the marketing arena, there are tons of technological advancements. There's new ones every day, it seems. And many people are overwhelmed by that. And I don't know that there's actually a huge amount of people in the world who could say, yes, I'm empowered by my technology stack, especially from a marketing department perspective. So I gathered the peeps here today for this conversation about what it looks like and what is the difference between being empowered by technology and just having a website, per se. Because I would say at this point in business, it's kind of a minimum viable expectation that businesses have a website. But what's the difference between just having a website and being empowered by technology? And Paula and I started getting into it. There's like tons of things we started talking about. So we invited Mark and Brendan to get into the conversation as well, and thought we would just kind of brain dump on what's the scale or what is possible when we move from asking questions about just having a website or just having a specific piece of technology over into the arena of actually being empowered by that technology, not maybe just in our teeny tiny use case, but on a full business perspective. So before we hop into the conversation, if you are joining us live, we would love to hear your voice as part of the conversation as well. So if you have a challenge you're dealing with about being empowered by technology, specifically would love to hear about that. Or if you have any insights of past experiences you've had, or you happen to be an expert yourself and you have insights that you can share with the other peeps during the conversation, please share that with us in the chat, because the more conversation we have, the more robust we have an opportunity to make this into a more enlightening conversation for all of us. All right, let's learn a little bit more about our friends on the panel today. So Paula, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you care so much about people being empowered by technology?
All right. Thank you, Tracy. I am Paula Amador. I am the Chief Product Officer for Expresia. My background is in marketing, and I've seen throughout my years many companies create websites, many companies rebuild websites, or talk about the website as the project that unlocks marketing or the project that unlocks product. And so many times I've seen it bloom into a lackluster result because of many reasons. And chief amongst those reasons, not only the fact that it can have delays, that it can become a costly thing, that content is a headache, all of those things could be there. But it's also the fact that maybe sometimes when the website actually happens and it's created, becomes a black box, and then it can't be accessed, it can't be updated, it's not really usable. So what should have been the start of an exciting path becomes a dead end. And marketing is all about results. And so if results need to be backed by possibilities, that's why I feel that technology empowerment is important for companies. It's my 2 cents to begin with.
Yeah, well, there's many things in there that I think we'll dig into as part of this episode, but let's keep learning about our friends on the panel today. So, Brendan, how about you? Who are you, and why do you care about people being empowered by
Who
technology?
am I? I'm Brendan Johnston. I'm heading up sales for Expresia. I've been in the kind of tech and telecoms business for a while now. Like many of us, and going back, even just having a website was a big deal. Now, and I think over time, I mean, this is pretty obvious, but the digitization of the customer experience has really come a long way, and the expectations and the demands of customers digitally has really transformed over the years and decades. So I think that's part of the theme here today. going well beyond just showcasing your products and services through a website. It's, allowing that client or user to really interact, try out that experience and interact with us in a very seamless, collaborative way. And that goes well beyond the brochure websites of yesterday.
Yeah, I think this is something I'm sure we will dig into, is the people interaction, how technology can enable a people interaction instead of maybe just replacing a people interaction. Because at the end of the day, it's still humans who are using your website or not using your website.
We're all human, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Today, anyways. I don't know what that'll look like in the future, but today we're all. And last but not least, Mark, who are you and why do you care about people being empowered by technology?
Hi, my name is Marc Charalambous, and President, CEO, founder of Expresia from way back. And I care about this because we've been doing it for 20 years and really deeply connected to, getting the most out of the energy that people put into, actually having this stuff manifest and change their businesses. And there is sort of a golden mean as to how to do this properly and to really empower people to take advantage of what this has the potential to bring to businesses. So this has been happening for a long time. We've been in the business building digital experiences for businesses. Goes back to 2000. There's been an incredible evolution, and the learnings of that evolution and sort of capturing what businesses have gone through over the last decade or two is really our passion, and making getting to the point where businesses can truly transform and get to the point where they're not going through this sort of Groundhog Day experience over and over again of this sort of, what I've seen over the years is a great imagination that started at the beginning, and the market's completely fragmented in so many different tools and so many different ways of doing things that we all seem sort of resigned to sort of pigeonhole things into smaller projects. Whereas I was thinking about this before the call. Early on, there seemed to be a greater imagination for what was possible. Companies were doing very imaginative things, I think, given the ability of technology to sort of deliver on that back in sort of the 2000s to 2010. And I think there's sort of been a resignation to this churn being just part of the business, and things, a lot of energy being put into projects and things that were transformational or intended to be transformational for businesses that never really succeeded, right? And now we've evolved to the point where these things are called technical debt, and we're sort of resigned to these problems, and there's sort of a no-fly zone. The organizations become more complex, more departmentalized, and a lot of these they've become really large challenges for businesses to do, right? Especially in the mid-market, where the budgets just aren't there to throw the kind of capital at what is required to build these quote-unquote omni-channel experiences that you see in the larger enterprises, the airlines, things of that nature, right? So it's been something we've been focused on very deeply to find that I think that golden thread through how to do this, and that empowerment of just looking at revisiting, I think, what the difference between just having a website and having that initiative done in such a way that it can bleed fully into a larger digital transformation for all humans that interact with a brand or with a company online. So at a high level, that's really the obsession, the North Star behind the platform and behind Expresia and behind what we do. And we'd love to share some experiences of what we've done in the past and how it can sort of change maybe your perspective on what's possible.
Okay, well, I love where we're going with all this what's possible piece of this. So Mark, one of the phrases you used was omni-channel. And I feel like, when was this? Maybe 10 years ago, when omni-channel was the thing, right? And then from a marketing perspective, you had to be communicating with your clients via email and on the website and text message and all of these things. So all of a sudden we had all of these kind of individual siloed segmented tech stacks. communicating with our clients for us. And I think to some degree, the market was sold the idea that this is what it looked like to be empowered by technology, was to use all of these, have all of these different pieces be active. But I would say from a lot of like my own personal perspective, but a lot of the other clients that I've seen as well, is that did the opposite of that. It like overwhelmed people in a way where now they have too much data. They can't possibly connect the data. They can't process the data. We're just now doing stuff to do stuff. We've had to hire people to like do stuff, but the stuff really isn't having an impact on our business. And then if I look at that from a being empowered by technology perspective, I would say that is not what it looks like to be empowered by technology. So specifically, if we look at these, like the concept of omni-channel experiences, what are some of the things that technology needs to do in order to actually empower us instead of just like being in existence?
I mean, I think what you're describing there, and I've talked to a lot of different, specifically, digital agencies, companies that provide digital services, and that word is pretty loosey-goosey these days. I mean, there's marketing, there's digital, there's like digital agencies that actually build things, there's strategy, there's a lot to this, and it's a pretty broad spectrum. For me, it comes down to one clear message, is that there is a ton of different firepower out there in the form of different tools. What seems to be happening is that people are struggling with the fact that these tools are all separate. They're not talking to each other. And that seems to be the largest struggle, is that, to your point, are these things making a difference to our business, or are we just doing them because it's what everybody's doing? How do we measure them cohesively, and how do you get all of this stuff working together? And there's no simple or clear answer out there, right? I mean, and this is sort of a very big part of where I think we differentiate, is the notion that, like, if you look at what's happening, all these different tools all deliver that functionality sort of vertically to the end user in their own way, right? Whether it be, how you're delivering your mobile apps, how you're delivering your website, how you're delivering, part of your marketing stack, all that stuff, and how people interact with it. And I mean, even for us, I mean, we're using a host of different tools, and there really is no clear way, or no simple way, or a way that's really, I guess, accepted in the marketplace for how that should be done, right? Like, to bring it all together into a seamless branded experience, which, again, I go back to this human-centric view, which is not just the customer. It's anybody who's connecting with the brand, whether they're staff or whether they're the customer, or anybody who touches a business, right? So how do you bring all that stuff together? How do you choose what's important, what's not important? Like, how do you cut the noise out? Like, each one of these tools people are using have got great dashboards. There's a ton of data. There's so much of it that, how do you really pick and choose what matters and bring it all together into a dashboard of which is really your company dashboard, right? You can always zoom in and look at a specific instrument or apparatus and figure out whether that thing's performing or not. But at the end of the day, when you look at the top level of the business and how people interact with that and how you're actually delivering that, part of that is a web experience, because you're communicating a lot about your business to the customer, and that might be where they log in and they're looking at the status of their account, and that relates to your accounts and all that kind of stuff, or any number of tools that and different processes, including old legacy systems that are within an organization. I find that's the common frustration, I would say, across everybody that I'm talking to, is that they're wondering where do they start, and what is the right place to start, and where do they start amalgamating everything together, and what does that look like? I think what we're communicating with a little bit of this conversation is that a website is a really great start to start that renewal, because how are you delivering that stuff to a device or a screen? It's that actual architecture and that actual approach to doing things that we believe should be bringing all the data from all your tools into that same experience. So what starts as a website evolves into a larger place for human beings to connect with a brand. And more importantly, I think, ensures that you're on the right path, and you're not going to have to, circle back and, figure out where you're at and retool again. I think that's the existential threat that's out there right now, where companies are looking at limited resources and time and human capital and all of that stuff, and opportunity cost of focusing people on these types of projects. I think everyone is happy to dig in and invest time and energy in a place that they know they're going to get a long-term return. But there's a lot of fear around, is this the right thing? And a lack of vision, I think, about what's possible. And having that clarity of vision and having that confidence and having the technology behind you that liberates you and actually promises this almost utopian view of what businesses are going to look like in the next 3 to 5 years, I think is really at the core of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think this harkens back, Paula, to what you said at the beginning about this isn't just a marketing project, right? It's not just a marketing project to have a website. There's a bigger picture here. And what I'm hearing from Marc is that in order to get into empowered by technology arena, we have to look at this as a more holistic ecosystem.
I think the days where you could get away with having a website just to be on the internet are way behind us, right? They've been behind us for 10 years or so, and many companies made that decision 10 years ago, and they're waking up to see that what they have today hasn't cut it for a long time, and it's not gonna do it for them in the next 10 years. And but I say it's also time for us to recognize that doing it again is not sustainable. So if you're in that place where in 2010 to 2014 you said, I'm gonna create a website and just set it and forget it, and you are about to do it again, I think it's time you consider the opportunity cost of going down that path, right? Because what essentially that means is that digital is probably not doing anything for your business. And in 2024, where technology is embedded in absolutely every industry, every service, every product, every human interaction, that's an absolute red flag for every business. So if you're faced with that red flag, how can your answer be, let's just do it with tools that were meant to create blogs 15 or 20 years ago? You know who I'm talking about, right? Or let's just do it with a drag and drop toy, so that I can put the fate of my business on a toy, right? Or let's just do it with whatever spare time my team has, or let's just solve this problem as if it was a menial situation instead of the first step to digitization. What you want is your website to end up in a place where that actually becomes the first step to a digital business model, to digital value creation, and to digital processes. Because the flip side of this is that one of the key things that come with digital is optimization. And there's a lot of what Marc described is that on the back end or on the back office of having all of these platforms or softwares working for you, on the back end you have all of those cables sticking out, and someone needs to be pulling and plugging, and it becomes really uncomfortable for the teams to manage this. So if you're at absolute zero in digital, or if you're somewhere in that middle ground where you have a host of things and there's a lot of complexity and there's a lot of data, but it's disconnected, you're starting to feel the pressure to do something else, something better, and maybe you're facing the fact that you need to rebuild something. Every time you're thinking that you have a digital project, it's time to do it better. And everyone feels it. The pressure to do it better is there. The thing is that we think that we're going to do it better using the same tools that we used to do it the way we've done it up until today, and that's going to get us the distance for the next 10 years. And that's simply not possible. So what we're saying is choose a tool that allows you to onboard the future as it comes, right? So choose a tool that delivers Web 3.0 when that's the conversation, that allows you to onboard AI when that's the conversation, that allows you to onboard omnichannel when that was the conversation, right? So all of these things are now part of the Expresia offering, and you don't have to figure them out. They come pre-baked. So choose a tool that allows you to get everything you need as you go, but also choose a tool that allows you to basically define what your stack should be according to what you are looking for in your business instead of the features that that particular tool has. So in essence, technology empowerment for when you're having a website, to me, looks like being able to say yes to what I need for my business instead of looking at a feature list and just going like, oh, yeah, I can do this, but I can't do that. If that's the strategy that you're going to go with, that's not technology empowerment.
This is a really good point. And Brendan, I'd love to come back to you for this part of the conversation in terms of like, how do we know from a business perspective, like what kind of questions do we need to ask ourselves to, the phrase that Paula used was do it better. And so I think a lot of times when people are in this repeatable pattern of I set and forget my website every 10 years, and that just is how I do it. And what we're saying here today is perhaps that's not being empowered by technology. How do we make sure that we prioritize our own business needs over and above all of the features promotion? Because I feel like from the market, we get, as business owners, a lot of this is what you need, this is what you need, this is what you need. And how do we navigate that minefield to stay committed to what we actually need?
I think part of it is really taking a look at your own organization as well, and the level of complexity and the tech stack that you have today. And to say, with that level of complexity and the change in your organization, are you able to deliver the customer experience you want to deliver, or delivering that brand experience that you're promising, right? So if you are a company that has made a few acquisitions over time and you've added new systems, and all of a sudden you've got 2 CRM systems and 8 ERP systems and whatever else, I mean, you don't have a hope in hell of bringing that together to deliver that customer experience that you want, right? So finding a way, kind of a solid digital foundation that can bring those pieces together to meet those expectations, but also to empower your employees. I mean, at the end of the day, we've talked about the customer experience is only as strong as the weakest link. And if your employees and your internal processes and systems are not in a position where you can use them appropriately, then you're going to fail, right? You're not going to be able to meet those expectations. But there is a way of dealing with that. So going back to your question, I think it's looking at the complexity and the existing workflows in your system and just saying, if I slap this website builder against that, how do we think that's going to play out? And I think if you do that exercise, it'll be clear that you probably need a different approach.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to this. I'm sitting here listening to the conversation, and one of the things that really stands out to me is that and Paula mentioned it, Brendan just mentioned it as well, and I think it's a tough one for non-technical people to be. I think this is maybe what we should be trying to sort of demystify a little bit here. It's really the what, or the goal of the system that's important, right? It's not just about, a lot of the time tools deliver a very specific outcome, and they're good. and they get you to that outcome, and then you sort of hit a wall. And I think this is why a lot of these tools are sort of infiltrated organizations, because they solve relatively, important problems, but relatively short-term problems, and they can't really expand past a certain point. I'm really going to try to not get back into construction analogies here, but it's the difference between having wet concrete and Lego block bricks of stuff, right? A lot of the way that we sort of approached this is allowing our platform to be completely fluid, and being able to reach out into all of these other tools or technologies that you just have within an organization. Brendan mentioned this, 9 ERP situation. There is a hope in hell to get to an end point where you deliver something that brings all of it together. It's the question is how and what architecture you're using in order to sort of achieve that, right? And I think that's one of the bigger, this is where things get a little scary for people, because it's overwhelming. And I think what the goal of Expresia is to sort of bring all that engineering in an open architecture. So I want to be very clear. It's not about features that are very specific to an end outcome, like, a shopping cart or all of that stuff is valuable at a certain level of your business. But at some point you have to make that transition where you're actually taking control over all of those human interactions and actually being able to reach in to the different applications within your organization and bring them to the surface, and have that in that process be completely abstracted and exposed, so that from there on in, your organization as an entity can talk to the world in a technological manner through an open API, and be able to sort of build on that foundation moving forward, right? So I think that's at the sort of crux of where a lot of non-technical people, there's a lot of talk about APIs. Many of these tools have APIs. So I think, and just to bring this conversation back to sort of the topic about empowerment by technology, I want to be really clear. Everyone is empowered by technology. The last 25 years, not to mention, you could go back 1,000 years, technology has always empowered us. It doesn't mean that the technologies don't have sort of an edge to them, right? And I think, so I want to acknowledge that there's a lot of great tech out there. I don't want to come across like we're poo-pooing anything that has been an important evolutionary step in where businesses are going. And compared to where we came from, there's been incredible advancements in what people have been able to do and how people have been able to communicate online. And we're in a much better place than we were 10 years ago by a long shot. Earlier, what I said about that imagination piece, I think is important, because we had more blank pieces of paper, and it was a new time where people's imaginations really flourished, and we hit a lot of walls. And I think that created a bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Expectations that things were going to be the same, right? We've got a ton of really great technologies and tools right now, but there's so much of it that it's just leading to the point where how is it serving us? And is there an opportunity for businesses as they hit that wall to do something different and to sort of really bring everything within their organization into something of a digital experience that is actually their business, right? It's not a website about their business. It's not a digital experience about their business. It is their business. Like, if you look at the real leaders out there, the technology companies that have got, again, this ability in their DNA to spin up these architectures and to write new code that is going to create really different experiences. That's what they do. That is their business. But the rest of the internet is sort of sitting here with these digital experiences that are not really getting there, and they're not technology companies. So there's something missing there. So how do you go about doing it? The traditional way is being to sort of sub that out and trust that it's going to get done properly. And I think we're at the point where we know now that everyone has 2 or 3 stories of a really great starting relationship with a group of people or an agency or a dev team. And if you don't ask all the right questions at the beginning, all of a sudden, 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line, you realize that that architecture is not going to support your imagination. That architecture is not going to support where, in your mind's eye, you can imagine your business being from a digital experience standpoint. I mean, everyone out there can imagine an interface that everyone shows up to work at. Is it really going to be spreadsheets and stuff all over the place? Or are we going to get to the point where the truly remarkable companies out there actually turn the digital experience into how they manage policy, how their processes work? Those are their processes. There's not a file that says this is how we do things, and someone's responsible to update that file. And hopefully everybody pays attention to it and follows policy and procedure. There's an opportunity to actually make the digital experience the business, right? That's where I see it tending. And so that's how we engineered everything we do, is to that end state where I think, companies will be. And if you see what's happening recently with the new Apple glasses and all that stuff, if what you're building now isn't intentionally trying to get to a seamless evolution into that space, you're doomed to repeat what you've done in the last 5 years. So that's the kind of question we're kind of getting people to start asking of whatever technology you use. Is what you're building for me going to get me into a position where I can seamlessly roll into that technology and elegantly transition from where I'm sitting right now with all my technical debt into something that's going to be A, not disruptive for my business, and B, I'm going to get 3 levels of harmonics on this. I'm going to get full digital transformation on the timeline. I'm going to fully digitize my business, and I'm going to be fully future-proof. If what you're going to try to do doesn't answer those 3 things, and there's probably more, I'm just, talking at a high level here, I think you're probably going to be going through this process again, right?
Paula,
And-
came up.
Yeah, and thinking about that and tying it back to the website thing, the reality is that the website is where you tease a lot of these business ideas and a lot of these processes, and the website is the entry point to what then maybe becomes a business unit, a service. Tracy, you and I were discussing this the other day. We have this initiative for partnerships that started as a simple landing page to see who wanted to be a partner, now became a directory, and will now be going into the product. And it wouldn't be possible to make all of these transitions in the span of 3 to 4 months if the technology that we were using behind the scenes didn't allow us to pivot as fast as we pivot now. I think that's another key point here, is that speed matters. And we're seeing that in management trends now very much, which is the idea of experimentation, the idea of agility, the idea of validation. But are you really able to put that in practice when just being able to experiment takes you a long time, and being able to pivot from your learnings takes you a long time, and you even have to involve a software into the experiment and implement it and see its results, etc. Can you inject more speed? Can you inject more flexibility into what you're doing? I think that's an important part of the question here too.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit in the last call, is that if you get to that point where you've got a lot of insights and you need to pivot, and then you realize that your solution can't pivot with you, the disruption and distraction and cost and the loss of momentum of your business as you move to that new solution is not insignificant.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
it's
so
super disruptive. Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, so something that's coming up here, and I think we did touch on this in the last episode as well, was this concept of urgency, right? So yes, speed matters, but then my brain goes to like, what is urgent? So the experience I'm pulling from is that when I started working in the marketing industry, and the company I was working for was like, we need a Facebook page. I'm like, tell you when I entered the marketing industry. Then like everybody just started having a Facebook page. Facebook was new. Everyone had to have a Facebook page. And I remember asking the VP of marketing at the time, okay, great. What are we going to use our Facebook page for? And he was like, it doesn't matter. We just need a Facebook page. And I was like, what? Okay. Like if the customers think it's for like complaining, but we don't staff it with people who can like handle complaints, then we have a problem, blah, blah, blah. And so when we're talking in these deeper things about how can you empower, where do you see your business going, and how do these investments take you there, versus, which to me seems, I would hazard on the side of not necessarily urgent, but important, versus a lot of these things that get thrown at us from a technological perspective that make us feel like if we don't do it now, we're going to miss the boat. AI, right? And we don't prioritize how that looks from a building our business towards where we want our business to go. We almost get peer pressure into implementing things fast because speed matters. So I just wanted to kind of get all of your opinions on that dichotomy.
Well, speed does matter. And there's a lot of great tools out there that get, and again, there's a time and place for everything we're talking about. So there's a couple things. There's a bit of a myth around cost. So let's talk about that. I think number one is that doing what we're talking about costs a lot of money. And traditionally, I think it has, right? Because you're paying really smart people who've got really deep tech knowledge to make really good decisions for you and your business. And they charge a lot of money for it. And the large platforms out there that are promising, it's not even they're promising what we're talking about. They're capable of handling really large business problems. And so there's, I think a balance effect there of, having to ensure business continuity while not perhaps getting an ideal outcome, right? And there's no perfect world. So I think that this is, standard in making business decisions, right? But I think what that's kind of created is this myth that you're either here in the, messing around with the open source tools or the drag and drop builders, and that this is good enough for now. I'm just starting my business, or I'm in the mid market, so I'm using something that my web developer has been working with for the last 5 years, and there's a status quo that exists there, and then on the other side is this large enterprise platform for the large companies that we're used to experiencing these let's just say more full omnichannel experiences from, right? And by and large, if you just look at it on the surface, they all do a good job. But I think the myth that there's sort of the cheap side and the expensive side, and that you can't kind of have both, is something I'd like to dispel. I mean, whether you're doing a small website or whether you're doing an enterprise website, there should be an equivalence to how you go about delivering this stuff and organizing things. And that's that's a foundational part of what we've done. So number one is, you can start really small using a technology like Expresia and spend budget appropriate amounts of money to do so. And actually a core tenet of sort of our approach is that you should be able to go from startup to enterprise over on the same technology. And that's sort of a foundational design principle with everything we do. Delivering, all of it's delivered to a browser. Yes, there's a ton more going on behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, it should be a continuum. So that's number one. And the price relationship with that continuum is a direct relationship. So if you're starting down at the lower end of the spectrum and you don't have a ton of traffic and you don't have a really complex need, you just want to build a website, you can start building a website. You should be able to start building a website with really great technology And you should know 100% that that technology can grow with you for 50 years. Now, that's a big ask, but in theory, that's how we look at other things in the world. That's how we look at building buildings. You know, there's short-term things and long-term things, and we've got to a point where the way we engineer our society is it's engineered. Like, you can start small, grow large. The engineering doesn't change, right? So I think that's an important piece of what we're talking about. And I'd like to just sort of really speak to that you don't have to make a choice between price and the quality of the technology and the depth of the vision and the depth of where and what you can do with it. So I think that's a really important piece that I think is most people that I speak to seem to think that you have to sort of choose between the one or the two, which resigns people to just do the short-term thing, like, okay, I'm just going to do a WordPress site, or I'm just going to do something quick online that's easy for my marketing team, right? And sometimes those are the right decisions short-term, but at some point, and we're speaking, I think, more specifically to the mid-market here, where they're at a point where they need to make that decision to sort of move into something different. And for those with the right imagination, who do see the future and do see all the value creation they can have as a business by getting into a position where technology is something, becomes somewhat of a superpower to them. If they can figure out how to do that and work with the right partners, like a technology like Expresia, they can actually build entirely new revenue streams and opportunities for their businesses, which I think are going to be really important to see how businesses sort of separate from the pack over the next 5 years.
I was just going to say that back to the kind of urgency theme, and I've talked to you about this, Tracy, is this analogy with your physical health sometimes, right? There might not feel like there's an urgency to change your behavior or your diet today because you're not seeing the symptoms. So you'll go with the easy solution, which is having a hamburger for breakfast. I don't do that, but some people might. But when it gets to a critical mass and it does impact your health, the symptom that you're going to experience is so severe that it's going to be too late. I mean, the equivalent is the digital heart attack, right? That's when your solution is not fit for purpose. You hit a wall, and as we said before, the cost, the disruption, the distraction to the business is so severe that it could be existential for your business. So the urgency might not be there in the very short term, but the price that you might pay kind of in the midterm by taking that easy short-term decision might not be something you're super happy about.
But also on the other hand, maybe if we want to dispel the myth of cost, I'd also like to dispel the myth of ease of use, because I think that we're thinking, I don't know about you, but I think that a lot of the people that we talk to feel like they've got the tools they know, that they can afford, that they can implement on, that they can use, and that's the confines of their world. I'm talking the WordPresses, Shopify's, etc. of the world, and that there's something else magical, mythical that large companies use that they can't access and that they can't really use because they would need large teams and large investments and etc. And so the cost portion of it, Marc already told us, isn't true, but the ease of use portion of it isn't true either. In reality, what those companies are using, I mean, it is very different from what you're seeing here in the off-the-shelf solutions, but the interfaces to use it or to use those tools are not that different. So you're going to find that you have a CMS as well, or a content management system. You're going to find that you also have an e-commerce or an e-store with a product listing, with inventory management, with your orders, etc. Everything you do for e-commerce. You're going to find that you have access to data dashboards, and that you can query those dashboards, and that you can ask business questions, right? You're going to find that you can create custom workflows that reflect the way your team works and your team those things, etc., you're gonna find that in the end, ease of use is, you're probably gonna have to rethink what it was, because maybe ease of use at the beginning or on the off-the-shelf world is knowing where the buttons are. But when you're using the pro gear, ease of use is actually being able to do what you want to do at the speed at which you want to do it, for the people that you want to do it with, which is another factor, and that's that the Pro Tools, and that's particularly Expresia's case, have natural workflows for technical teams who want to be coding in the tool, right? So they get their coding world, and they have workflows for the marketing team, right? And they have workflows for the content team, and they have workflows for the business team, and so on and so forth. And so ease of use becomes who are you, what are you trying to, etc., which is a very different question from where's the button to create a piece of content.
Which I think is a really great point you make, Paula, because when you come back to this concept of being empowered by technology, does it look precisely the same for me to be empowered by technology who has a software background, who has a marketing background, versus somebody who may not have either of those backgrounds or is more advanced in one of the backgrounds, but not the other one? And that's one of the things I find interesting about a lot of the out-of-the-box solutions, is that they've created like average experience, right? So like, this is what the average user will need to do. Except I'm not the average user. And I go into this like weird exercise of trying to like Google code that I can input into my Squarespace website, because I know a little bit more than the average user, but I'm not a coder, but I know enough to probably break my website. But it's not optimized to me as an individual user. It's optimized to the average user, which then I would say is not optimized, is probably the wrong word to use there.
Well, I mean, it's not even about, like, again, for me, it's you can't make something that is going to be excellent for everybody. So, you know, when you do engineer something that you deliver, it should not only be, I mean, at first you want to optimize it for who you think your most important users are. But what's more important is that it should be completely flexible. And I think that's, again, another North Star for us, is that, you know, I often call the back end of Expresia the boiler room, because it's meant to be a little bit more, you know, it's a very practical way of organizing a ton of information that customers that have decent sized businesses need to take into account. You're not going to get away from that problem. It's a real challenge. You've got companies that are complex. They got a lot of stuff. How do you organize it in a way that's consistent? It's not meant to be, it's not meant to appeal to your lowest common denominator user. I call it the boiler room for a reason, because you want certain people in there, and you've got a lot of power there. It's where you can control the entire physical or the digital face of a business. So yeah, you want it to be pro gear. It needs to be pro gear, and it's for professionals, right? But then how do you go from there to this next layer up, where that pro gear is now delivering you as an organization the ability to create that curated, wonderful, brand specific, you make all the decisions, because guess what? It's your business. You're the subject matter experts. It's not about being a tech expert. It's about being an expert in your own business. Like if you're running a flower warehousing company, and there's a lot of complexity, and there's different departments, and there's ways that you deal with stuff, how do you bubble that into a software layer that with a team of designers and professionals? Again, this is not about, hey, you know, here's your flower shop and you can make it work for no matter how big your business is in 20 minutes with a junior resource. It's not that. There's a million tools out there that do that. That's not what Expresia is. Expresia is about saying, hey, you've got a real business. You're 20, 30, 50 years in business. It's a real P&L. There are real risks and opportunities at stake by getting this right. You can either take over the world in the flower world, or you can lose that battle because of what and how you do what you're doing, because someone is going to come and do it better and provide a much better customer experience. And that, again, human experience. How well is your staff working? What are the systems like within your business that allow them to be super fulfilled in what they do and super efficient and super capable of achieving real outcomes? So the architecture that we envision is that you should be able to take whatever's in that architecture and bubble it up a layer and build real bespoke human experiences or software that is your business's, that becomes your IP, that is part of that experience that all of your staff can participate in, that allows you then to plug into your disparate third-party systems, your ERPs, some of your older accounting, this, that, or the next thing. I mean, even just for us running a business where we've, got companies in, say, or offices in three countries, there are limitations that have nothing to do with technology that dictate some of the tools you need to use. Accounting systems are a great one. In different countries, you have to use different tools because they report into different tax authorities. It's not about whether you like it or not, it's the rules. So how do you bring all that stuff together into something that, consolidates that into a company's view of itself and allows that efficiency to happen, right? Those are the kinds of questions that, and that, by the way, is a website. We used to call them, the intranet was a really popular term back at the early days, because people had that's what I talk about, the imagination. We had the imagination for, wow, imagine what computing could do for our businesses at the beginning of the internet. And then we kind of hit a wall and realized, oh, it's not there yet. The tech isn't really delivering an experience of the business that aligns with what people are really experiencing in the business, what used to be a paper and a more analog system. But at least it was a company system. At least it was true to themselves. It felt and looked like them. They had their own way that they did everything. They labeled their files a certain way. That's what companies were and still are, I think, right? What happened was we sort of tried to get this into the intranet space, and we went and put everything into this thing that wasn't really us. It was another way of working. It was a way of organizing stuff. And ultimately, I haven't heard a great intranet story in a long time. Most intranets, tons of energy and time and human capital invested into making these work, and they never worked, right? Because people didn't trust them. They were clunky. They didn't actually represent what businesses were doing. So, but ultimately, that's part of an ecosystem, and any one of those things that are delivered through a browser technically is a website, right? So when we start talking about websites, it's also very important to think about, well, what do we mean? A website can be a $25 site that's just a little brochure, or it can expand into a way that every single person that touches an organization can interact with that business. And again, I spoke about this in the last call. Like if you go to the Apple Store and you go and you try to interact with anybody at the Apple Store, the staff, the customers, everyone's interacting with the same software. Right? There's no line between it. It's not like they go in some crazy system in the back end and then they come out to you and it looks different on an iPad. It's all consolidated. Work and the retail experience for a customer like us is completely merged together, right? And I mean, it's Apple. Of course, they're the visionaries and the leaders, but they're really just setting the standard as to what's possible. And that imagination is what businesses, I feel, need to be empowered to go and ask for. And what I'm trying to say out in these talks is that it is possible, it's achievable. Not only is it achievable, it's super likely that you can get these outcomes if you invest in the right tech and you have the right vision, right? But it's not about siloed little bits and pieces all over the place. It's about a unified way of looking at your business and choosing. And there's other tech that can do this. We're not the only company in the world that could do this. This is not the point. I think the point is that where's the right fit around price and around where and sort of accessibility to this technology. You do have to work with professionals. You can't, take a flower business and a junior person and expect you're going to get this kind of an outcome. You're not. You need to invest. You need to be serious about it. But the outcomes and the possibilities are really, really quite exceptional if you can get this right. And I'm happy to talk about a bunch of examples too. I think we may want to in the last couple of minutes, because we're talking about a lot of large concepts that I think are putting a lot of pressure on people's imaginations. they want to connect it to their own business. So that might be something we want to explore.
Yeah, or I mean, like, because I'm conscious of the time. This is what I would encourage people to do is that if you're sitting and you're listening to this right now and you're wondering whether or not your tech is actually empowering your organization, have a conversation with an expert about it. We have an expert panel of peeps here today. You could talk to Paula, Brendan, or Mark about any of those things. And the point being is that there's a unique way that it looks for your business to be empowered by technology. It's not cost prohibitive. It is not urgency prohibitive. It is not any of the other things that we said were prohibitive. It's like user experience, right? Like these are tools that are available today. And I think the like really core part of the conversation that we can leave people with is that what is your technology doing for you? Or is it just there?
And it's okay if it's just there. It's okay if it's just there. I mean, it's a choice you need to make as a leader in your business.
That's right. It's a choice. It's a choice. Just make sure that you're making a choice instead of, like, I don't know, prolonging status quo.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just give you one really quick example. Talking to one of our customers about how solving a website problem has led to a massive opportunity. Looking at an e-commerce retailer who has got about 100 resellers, physical stores across North America, all selling the same product, but all autonomous, running their own websites, all that kind of thing. What started as an initial conversation about, okay, let's get this website up to snuff. Let's, get it where they wanted it to be and to provide the customer experience that could really step ahead of their competition, has now turned into, well, why stop there? Why not as the prime retailer provide services to all the resellers so that in one platform you can deliver 100 different websites with autonomy to each one, or limited autonomy, whatever their goals are, and start to be in a situation where now you're driving a revenue stream internally by providing all of this technology seamlessly to your resellers. The resellers are thrilled because now they don't have to take that on. And not only that, from a unified brand experience, having 100 resellers with 100 websites selling the same product is giving a very heterogeneous experience of the brand, right? But until we started having this conversation, they never considered being able to push out that kind of tech to 100 resellers without having a massive tech team within the business. But it's all of a sudden, these are the conversations we're having now, and all of a sudden this is now becoming a massive business opportunity, and we're starting to realize that getting this right means 5, 10, 20% increase in sales, just because you've got now a unified brand experience across an entire reseller network, efficiencies on how you're delivering the quality of those websites to that audience, the SEO, everything that's happening behind the scenes that's related to technical marketing and getting that right. So now their ROAS is much more effective, right? They're getting much higher returns on it. They're spending less, they're getting more. There's like 5 big tick boxes of what they've achieved, when really it wasn't that large of a project when it came down to energy and when it came down to actually implementation. So,
well, and I think this just really also speaks to what can happen when you have an expert asking you the questions, because you could have done a simple project, but when we explore what could this simple project, which is the thing you want to start with today, can allow the entire system to be empowered by technology. I think that's where we have a huge amount of opportunities. And I encourage any of you who are watching live to definitely connect with Paula, Brendan, and Mark. Make sure that you let them know that you saw them in the Empowered by Technology show, and stay in the conversation, right? This is a conversation to be continued, to be explored, to practice using your imagination in. And we encourage you all to do that. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will see you all on another episode soon, yet to be determined on the date, but we will let you know. We'll make sure you're all invited. And thanks so much for joining us today. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Ciao, Trace. Ciao, guys.